Hello, hello. Good evening. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? I think I made YouTube happy. I think, I'm not sure. Hopefully, everybody's hearing me crystal clear because it sure looks like I'm crystal clear, looking fresh and clear. Got a few things to talk about here, folks. And I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm doing my very best not to come across like a bitter old man. I am old, but I'm trying not to be a bitter old man. There's just a lot of I'm disappointed that some of these outlets allow some of this garbage, and I do my best to try to put a little bit of truth of what I see in this, but there's a lot out there. Let's break it all down. First, let's talk about the up parts, the good stuff, the stuff that's not going to upset me. So, Hex, the Hex project, and of course, it's associated with PulseChain. I've never invested in Hex. I understand what it does at a concept level. I felt for me that it was over complex. They built a lot to it, and I don't begrudge them for building a lot to it. It just wasn't for me in my portfolio. I felt like there's more to it, and do some analysis and see if it was something that was going to work. But I always was skeptical of the long term. I'm unfortunately in this mindset of long term. I'm not familiar with Richard Hart directly. I know he's been around a long time. He's been around the game a long time. And so I'm not criticizing him, questioning him, or any of that at all. I've listened to his videos. The unfortunate truth, and this is not a ding on him, but it's just my observation. He comes across as shady. He doesn't mean to. He just comes across that way. You know, the sitting on the trucks and the looks like a champagne room or a stripper room or something he's in doing an interview, and he's interviewing with girls. I think he was talking about his first time in the back of a car or something. I'm saying he's not trying to. He comes across that way. And this may be causing certain people to be skeptical of the project, the Hex project. So I've always kind of watched it and said, okay, well, the price movement seems to be reasonably stable. And of course, I look and I see that their liquidity pairs are really good. They have really good liquidity breakout, largely around stable coins. They purposely targeted stable coins to support the token. And I've always said that I believed many of these projects that struggle, it when they pair to BNB or ETH or any of the gas tokens, it didn't make any sense to me either because they're volatile. They're going to go up and down. But if you pair to stable coins, you should see more reasonable stability. I assumed that many of the tokens preferred the gas token because it's what people would most likely have. In your wallet, you're less likely to have a stable coin. You might have a stable coin if you're on an exchange, but in your wallet, you're more likely to have the gas token. Why? Because you need gas in order to do transactions. So I understood the logic. I just felt that you still should at least create the pairs for USDC, USDT, DAI, and so on. This whole business with UST made me second guess myself because maybe that wasn't a smart move and maybe there was some logic to not going to that token because, of course, UST completely crapped, whereas BNB and ETH and the other ones are, although volatile and although they went down, they're never going down past a certain point. Ethereum obviously is kind of crapping now, but for the longest time, it was holding resistance pretty good. So perhaps they had it right and I had it wrong. Fast forward, and I'm watching Hex, and I see its price movement. I got the graph up here. And while it's in the downward position, I don't mean that in an innuendo. I'm saying it's heading down. It's not necessarily crapping. It has a reasonable stability. It's going up and then it goes down, a reasonable up and down. So, okay, I can feel confident, a little bit more confident that it's going to be here. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be the next Luna, let's say. I never bought in because, again, I was kind of still watching it and kind of watching it. And you're like, well, how long is it going to take you to make a decision? I don't have an answer to that one. So it comes along PulseChain and PulseX. And I forget how I learned about it. I think it popped up on PooCoin or something, banner. And I click it and I take a look at this PulseChain and I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. This makes sense to me. It's going to be another blockchain. Your goal is to take off some of the load from Ethereum. I like that because Ethereum's gas fees were getting on my nerves. Here's the story. Back when I first got into cryptocurrency, we're talking when I very first got into it. Of course, I wanted to get into SHIB. There was like 300,000 holders and nobody was really on it. It hadn't hit the hype yet. It had already done the initial pump and crashed the first time. And so I wanted to buy into SHIB. And then this is the first time I'm encountering these gas fees and they want like $100 for this business. Now, if you're trading thousands of dollars on it, this extra $100 is nothing to you. But in my case, I'm trading $20, $30. And these idiots trying to ask $100, $130 in gas. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me, brother. And so now I'm in this quandary. Satama comes along, and Satama at the time, it had it was out for like 2 or 3 months, and it was already doing this jump where it's like dropping a zero every month. Well, I want to jump into this, so I'm trying to get the gas into the wallet, and I'm using Coinbase wallet, which is crap, so that made it harder. And they want $100 of gas, $150 of gas. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. I eventually just eat it and get in. I didn't get as much as I wanted because I had $150 to spare. So it climbs, it climbs. I'm able to take profit and get most of it back. The point is, I start getting really sick of this whole gas business. It's not working for me. I can't deal with this. So the very last Ethereum token, the very last one I ever bought in on was Paratoken. And then I sold that one because they started screwing up. But I'd bought ID Finance Ethereum, Kishimoto Ethereum, Satama, SHIB, and a couple of other ones Ethereum, and burned. And when I ran the numbers, you're talking thousands of dollars just in gas. Mind you, the gas doesn't benefit you as an investor. It benefits a miner, MINER. And I wasn't having it. I know they need to get compensated, not on my dollar. It wasn't going to work. So I switched to Binance, predominantly Binance Smart Chain. I forget what token put me in the Binance Smart Chain. I don't remember now. All I know is I got into the Binance Smart Chain. I do my first trade, and it's like 15 cents. I'm like, ooh, that's what it should be. This is right. So I'm doing more Binance tokens. I bought tons of Binance tokens, but I'm noticing something. I'm noticing that there's more dusting attacks. I'm noticing that there's more scams like rug pulls, honeypots. I'm noticing that many of these tokens don't last worth a damn. I'm noticing that these devs seem like they're more sketchy, they're more childish, they're more, to the moon, let's run, go, do type of cults and communities in the Binance. And then it clicks. It's like, okay, if it's cheap to get in, it sounds good to me, but it's also cheap and easy for the scammers. So now I'm stuck in the middle of you. I'm stuck. I can't have what I want, which is I just want the gas to be reasonable. I don't even think I should have to pay gas, but it just needs to be reasonable. But at the same time, if it's reasonable to me, it's reasonable to the scammer. So I have a choice. I can eat the gas over here or deal with this. When PulseChain comes along and they talk about we want to take off the load from Ethereum to get the gas down, two things might happen. If they're successful on it, that means we're going to see more scammers on Ethereum. You don't see many scams on Ethereum. You do see them, but not nearly as much. They're less prominent, or they're certainly less obvious when they happen. Like, we're talking situations where they might sound good and then they just give up, right? Not the blatant ones like with Strange Emu, which is Binance. You don't see the blatant ones. The ones where it's like, this token's garbage. Why would you even talk about it? Why would you even think about it? You don't see a lot of those on the Ethereum side. You see they look robust, they look solid, they look sound, but the devs just screw up. That's a lot of the Ethereum tokens. So PulseChain making this proposition appeals to me. And so I did a sacrifice because I wanted to see, okay, what's this going to look like? And you're saying you're going to airdrop the Ethereum tokens, which of course I have none. And I'm doing it really just to kind of play with it, see what happens, see what the value of that token is, like when it grows, if they pull it off and you get whatever it is, PLS or PLSX token. Is that going to start climbing? Is it going to go to the moon, doop, or what's going to happen? So that I threw every last bit of Ethereum I had at it. I threw my spare BNB at it just to see what's going to happen with this thing and just play that, because that's zero risk. It's throw away excess coins in this case to see how this PulseX is going to go. And then that lets me prove it out. It lets me prove Richard Hart out, because if he makes that succeed, the way it's pretty lofty, if he makes that succeed, I have no choice but to trust Hex at that point, because it'll mean he's shown me that he can deliver. And that's what I care about, is can you deliver? I don't care about the lofty. Hex has too much hype on social media. PulseX has some, but nowhere near what Hex has. Hex has unreasonable hype. And that's not to say it's not a good project, but my mantra always is, if it's getting too much hype on social media, I'm less likely to invest, because I'm just not sure until the dust settles. The dust never settles on this. So I want PulseChain to come out, prove itself out, prove it's what Richard said it's going to do. It's going to drop tokens to everybody that's in the yin yang, and it's a free airdrop to people, quote unquote. And your sacrifice is going to get you this PLSX or whatever, and it's going to start climbing, and we're going to see Ethereum gas to go down. Every bullet they gave me, if I see they're all happening, I'm then saying, okay, I'm in Hex and I'm going to go all in, not YOLO, but I'm saying I'll go on in as I'm confident, see how that goes, and then play it by ear and kind of work with it. But people have always asked, how come you're not in Hex? And that's why. It's because I'm not sure. It looks stable, but a lot of projects have looked stable and they crapped. UST. So I'm sketchy because there's so much hype on it, and maybe that's not fair to them and the community, but that's just how I am, and that's how I positioned it. I didn't want to go further deeper, knowing that it could just crap out at some point later. So, yeah. Speaking of graphs and candles, you may have noticed there's a bit of green, and the green is coming for 2 points. One, Bitcoin went back up a little bit, which of course helps everything else. But I noticed that Phantom jumped way more than everything else. It went back up like 30%. I was digging to try to figure out what happened, what changed. Is it something specific to Phantom, or is it just a bunch of whales bought in? What the heck's going on? Could not find the answer. I know they have a burn. I know they have a lot of mechanics. It looks like a lot of devs jumped on Phantom. That's what it looks like. I saw Orion. Orion is the same validator from UST. So I made the potential theory that some of these people that were on the UST side jumped on Phantom and caused a spike with their new development and their new launches. Could not prove it. Tried my darndest. Couldn't do it. Phantom got the biggest jump, like Phantom Libero, for example. Crazy amounts of jump when the volume is nothing. It's like 10,000. So it didn't make any sense why, except that the backing currency went up in significant value, which seemed to strengthen it. Now, that could be a precursor to something, right? If Phantom, the token, the gas token, if Phantom can significantly increase its value as a result of the decline of Ethereum and BNB, all of a sudden the game changes. Anybody that doesn't remember Avalanche when it launched, Avalanche was pretty darn cheap. It was dumb cheap. And then all of a sudden it started growing because more devs got on it. You saw more DApps built. You saw more utility built. You saw more tokens show up. And then they built that subnetting, which basically makes it infinitely scalable. And then it just starts shooting up. So anybody who bought Avalanche in the beginning easily made millions of dollars when it started jumping. And this occurred that Phantom could be the same thing. Polygon was supposed to be. Polygon got tanked by that garbage sunflower game, so it never got to be. But Phantom could have that potential where it goes up and just starts going to the moon. Now, I had never bought into Phantom beyond Scary Chain Capital. That was one, and Any Printer. Those are the only two I ever had on Phantom, and I didn't go all in on either one of those. On Scary Chain Capital, I think I even still have that little tiny little bag. And I was just watching price movement, didn't see it was going anywhere. I like the gas, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of activity on it, so I never went full. Spooky Swap is garbage, so that made me skeptical. I don't know. I want to go in this, but the point is, something's happening with Phantom. I don't know what it is, but it could be a precursor to positive price movement, and that's unusual because we're seeing down points other places. So either they change something, or there's people going there, migrating there, and getting off of where they're at. Like think of like with this Luna business, and they're going to do the fork. What if these devs choose not to build up on the new fork and they just go to another network? Like that would be huge. That would actually support what I theorized might happen, which was the loss of sentiment might cause kind of this defection. And I'm intrigued because I now have a Phantom bag because I bought it because of Phantom Libero. Geez, if that thing goes to the moon, I'm anyway. So there's green in places. Ethereum did go up slightly, but not nearly as much as we expect because it's still like half down. And all of these, like Kiba, for example, and Kiba on the Ethereum chain, I have it on the Binance chain. The graph is largely the same between the two. Kiba, I refused to buy any more into it because they got rid of reflections, and that pissed me off because they didn't. Kiba is one of those projects that should be way higher than it is because of the partnerships they have with the racing companies. And then they make the changes to the tokenomics when they did the new version, and they dropped everything. And I was like, all right, screw you guys. They were getting beat up. And part of that was sentiment. I know some of the people were really pissed off when they changed tokenomics. Some of it was what was happening in the bear. And then it slightly started recovering because people started buying back in. But you still have these large cells. So a 20 ETH cell is not insignificant for them. They don't have a significant amount of liquidity left in the pool. They actually just dropped beneath the million for the first time. And they don't have a lot of holders. There's only 5,000 holders. business. So I think Kiba's one that should be easily 2 zeros higher than where it is. Obviously, the whole thing, what's going on with UST, if they're all that, I got it. But I think a lot of this might be sentiment. So I started looking at other projects because I was trying to find a pattern in graph behavior. I looked at Bone, which pissed me off because Bone had tanked. It tanked. This one got as high as like $60 at a point. It's like 30 cents. But I was trying to find a pattern. Okay, is there some pattern in behavior here? If you look at Bone, while it has tank points, it was nowhere near what Kiba was doing. It was like steady loss. It wasn't like the complete sellout loss. But then I see 117 freaking ETH dump, 69 ETH dump, 49 ETH dump. And I'm like, okay, that's people completely. I'm pretty sure they're liquidating if they're not liquidating their whales. Chances are this 117 is just a whale. And I say that because when Bone hit rock bottom, and this happened a couple months ago, I told people I strongly recommend you buy in as much as you can because I think it's going to jump back up again. And some people took my advice because I forget what the low point was at that time, but it was lower than where it is right now. Somewhere here, it briefly dipped to lower than what it is right now. And I told people to buy it because there was limit orders that were pushing the price down. I know that this one's probably going to be somebody that's taken out, that's just exploiting the price. And then I looked at Terrarium, social media's love child. I purposely avoided Terrarium because I can't. They had the issue in the document. I was not sold on it. They fixed it. Kudos to them. But it's still getting unreasonable levels of hype and isn't really doing anything other than a building. That's fine if he wants to do a building. That's not going to work really for me. It doesn't move the needle. And Terrarium's struggling after its initial pump. And this is bad. Like when I see this kind of pump pattern, very few tokens have this type of a pump pattern. Does a pump, dumps, does another pump, dumps again. So I don't know if this is like influencers or something that did that. I can't say. All I can say is for what it's hyped to be, I'm not sold on Terrarium. So I had a bag at one point. I might even still have like 5,000 in there, like nothing, like a fraction of a penny or something. I wasn't sold. I'm happy they fixed the thing, but I wasn't really sold. So now I'm thinking, okay, if Terrarium's suffering and it's got major influencer coverage, it's got major hype, it's got major shield, major everything. It's got everything a token might want, minus Dell rug pull, shilling it all over the place. Is there something else going on? So I go to the poster child, which is SHIB. If SHIB has a similar chart, I know that it's just an aberration. When I look at SHIB's chart, and I have a tiny bit of SHIB, it's like $15 worth of SHIB that I had left over from profits. And SHIB has a similar type of deal where it's not crapping per se, but it's trending down. All of this tells me that what we're seeing in a lot of these is part of that whole deal with UST and Bitcoin and all that stuff. They're all affected by it at the core level. No problem. I'm more confident now that it's not going to be long term because at some point, Bitcoin is going to recover. And I'm going to get to why with my next topic when I get to that one, this idiot. Bitcoin's going to recover sometime. We just don't know exactly when. But everybody has the same graph movement. Even Saitama, as crappy as Saitama is, has largely the same graph movement going on with it. Largely the same. It's a casual degrade. It's basically sell off, sell off, sell off, sell off, sell off. Large ETH sells and that kind of stuff. They all have the same thing on the Ethereum side and even the Binance side. They all have the same pattern. There are parts where people are buying in, but there's so much sell pressure across the board, it's not able to sustain. I started thinking about this, and this gets to my talking of regulations. Janet Yellen and other parts of the U.S. government keep talking about we need regulations. This is the reason why. And then somebody else in the SEC said, we shouldn't let one company's failure cause us to panic and react. I agree with this. However, I do support smart regulation, and I think now's the time. In fact, I think it's overdue. What they're talking about, though, I don't agree, which is no, we shouldn't regulate the currency. That's not the problem. We need to regulate the people. Regulate the people, and everything else falls in line. Regulate people's behavior, because that's where you're going to have a break point. There's nothing wrong with the cryptocurrencies. Nothing. You need to regulate the people so that when things happen, they're held accountable. I'll give you an example. In the banking space, let's take the Wells Fargo with that John Stump idiot. They're what they were telling the salespeople is to basically force open accounts for people without telling them, without getting authority. There's nothing wrong with the account. There's nothing wrong with the debit card. There's nothing wrong with the checkbook. There's nothing wrong with the deposit. It was about people shilling it and pitching it and opening accounts without permission and not being held accountable for that action because they were desperate on the sales. So I'm saying you can't keep going after tools. That's the same thing they do with guns. It's the same thing they do with drugs and weed and alcohol. Everything is about the tool. They want to regulate the tool. Stop regulating the tool. Regulate the people. If we don't want a fentanyl drug crisis, maybe we should have tighter regulations on how people distribute the drugs, right? If we don't want to have these mass shootings, maybe we should more tightly handle and regulate how people distribute the weapons, right? It's not the weapon. The weapon didn't do anything. That's what I feel about cryptocurrency. It's not the crypto that's doing a thing. It's people that are going out of bounds. So why don't we fix the people? Put regulations on how they do this stuff. When they want to set up a new token project, they should be required to account and document to some authority that says, we created this token. Here's how the tokenomics work. Here's what we have in place to protect the investors. Here's how we're going to enrich them, or we plan to. And our goal is to go positive, and we have to KYC with that entity, and that information is made publicly available to every investor. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Because you want to scam. I saw, and I'll listen, I know that some people support it. I actually have a bag in it, but I'll call it, because I'm neutral. Voltinu. I heard that, what's his name, Voltoshi, and he said he's never going to put his face or whatever on the site. That's a risk. Anybody that's going to consider Volt needs to know he apparently has made the statement he's not going to put himself on the site. And you got to question why. Why would you not want to do that? Why would you not want to be open and transparent to your investors? They're your boss. So when I hear that he doesn't want to do that, that creates a risk, to the point that, I'm never going to give him any excessive support. Now, they have done some good stuff, and I think they have a good community. But when you make statements like that, it's risky and it's shady. When we talk regulations, that's one thing I like to fix. I don't think any token dev ever should stay anonymous or be able to, because we need to hold them accountable. We need to be able to find them. We need to be able to get the money back if they rip it off. If they don't want any of that smoke, and that we put your face out there, put your LinkedIn or how we confirm your credentials, don't worry about it, because you don't plan to rip us off anyway. So what's the problem? That's how I feel about it. And I've always felt that way, especially when you think the developer of Ethereum himself is an openly known person. The developer of Doge, those developers, as far as I understand, the original developers departed. The new developers are there. You can understand who they are on the Dogecoin Foundation. Why is it so abnormal for these new tokens spinning up to simply identify themselves? That's where I want regulation. The people. They shouldn't be allowed to tell us no. They shouldn't be allowed to refuse requests. They shouldn't be allowed to refuse when we're telling them these things. I would like to see that the dev is required to either renounce, but renounce isn't really good, or get on something similar to Everown and Everlock, where the community has to approve when he needs access to the liquidity, or when he needs access to change the code. It doesn't have to be those tools, but something similar. They have to account to us because we're their boss. I want that structure. That's where I want regulation, not the coin, the token. It has nothing to do with the tool. The tool is fine. Smart contracts are fine. All of them are fine. You could have the shadiest contract in the world. Owner's not renounced. They can change the fees. They can do all that. Fine. But if that person is held hostage to tons of regulation as a human, they have to do X, Y, Z. They have to show their face. They have to show their credentials. Contact information must remain current. They have to register with these tax authorities. They have to do all this stuff to where you ain't going anywhere. It doesn't matter how shady the code is, because guess what? The moment you steal people's money, people are after you, brother or sister. That's where we should be, I think, in a free market, because that's how it works in the private business sector. You have to register a tax ID or an employer ID number. You have to register your business with the state you're doing business in. You have to register with the tax authority. They have to know who you are and where to find you and be able to contact you. Why wouldn't we hold the same standard of crypto? So I do want smart regulation. I don't want silly regulation trying to say you can't have this crypto or you can only trade it during bankers hours, or you can't do it in this state, but you can do it in this one. That's what you're doing is turning it into the stock market, which isn't going to solve anybody's problem. And I will never support these kinds of things. Are you guys ready to have some fun? I have to turn into the other me. And I'm sorry in advance. I have to apologize. I got to take my head off for this one. I apologize in advance for what I must do, but I must do this because I saw this and listen, I was so livid. There was an article floating around social media. It's from a site called theconversation.com. And this guy, he took the whole crash, the recent crash, and he made so many fallacies around climate change and the climate crisis and all this attributable to cryptocurrency. And I figured, let's have some fun. Let's go to this dude real quick. So here's this slide. His name's Peter Housen. He's from Northumberland University in Newcastle. If you're in the UK, I haven't been to Newcastle myself. I'm in Leicester. But this guy, I got a set of quotes I parsed out of this article because a lot of it was fact, but it's the way he's presenting the fact into supporting his argument where I had to say something. I had to chime in. I even added him on Twitter, man. If he wants to smoke, I'll go with him because he's brilliant. He's got a PhD and all that. That's cool. But I hate it when sites allow garbage like this. Quote, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin were meant to be used as digital cash. That's not true. I know what he's saying. It's misrepresenting fact. Cryptocurrencies were not meant to be used, like Bitcoin, were not meant to be used as digital cash. They were meant to be used as a form of currency. Currency is not digital cash. Digital cash is a form of currency. Why am I making the distinction? Let's say if you wanted to trade your dog for somebody else's cat. That dog is a form of currency because it was used to do an acquisition of some kind. That dog is not digital cash. So I can't make the correlation that way. I know why he's saying digital cash because he's trying to basically depict this idea that cryptocurrency would fully replace regular currency. That was never the case. Josh Segala, who was on my podcast, he made the correlation to say basically you could do swap like we somewhat have, but not without having the dependency on fiat, right? That you could just simply swap it. So for example, I have 1,000 Bitcoin. You have some kind of crypto that I want. I'll offer you 100 of my Bitcoin for whatever currency you have. And we're doing a swap. We're doing kind of an exchange, right? But there's no fiat equivalency behind it. That's not digital cash. That was never the vision at first of cryptocurrency. It became the vision when we realized there was more to it beyond Bitcoin. Then all of a sudden it was, we can use this for fiat-based transactions as an alternative. That's where that came. So I'm saying he's misrepresenting what he's saying. No, at first it was meant to be a value pair that we could use for exchange and swap, not using fiat. Thus, there is no cash in your conversation. It was meant to be used as a form of currency. This is true, irrespective of the fiat equivalency behind it. It's a very important distinction because if you present it to say, yep, crypto is meant to be like digital cash, it instantly puts a picture in your mind that was going to replace all fiat. And that was not the original vision at all. Was there a potential that could happen? Absolutely. Did people push it that direction? Absolutely. Are governments trying to do that? Absolutely. There's a reason they haven't succeeded in there. Quote, proof of work mining can be thought of as a controlled way of wasting energy. This statement, people, pisses me off because of the way he says it. No, while it is a form of wasted, what he means is that proof of work mining is controlling wasted energy. It's not a controlled way of wasting. He's positioning it to support his narrative, which is he believes that's a waste of energy. It's not a waste of energy because you get something out of it. Again, it's a subtle distinction. It's a controlled way of using wasted energy. That's what proof of work mining is. We have excess energy. There's excess energy available. There's excess energy to use, and we want to make use of it for cryptocurrency mining. That's using wasted energy. It's not controlling the wasting of energy. That's illogical because a waste of energy means you didn't get anything out of it. The heat generated from the engine in your car is essentially wasted energy because it has to come off your energy because as energy generate the heat, but that energy engine block doesn't give it back to your car. Even if you run the heater is blowing off a different source. That's wasted energy is heat, which is why I'm saying this quote stupid, because he's misrepresenting what's really happening. For those that don't know, if you do mining of Bitcoin today, it's proof of work mining. That proof of work mining is using your graphics card, most likely. And what you're doing is you're using excess cycles of your card to perform calculations. I'll get to his next slide that talks about this. But that energy is already there because you'd had to power on your computer in the first place to do something. Using it for cryptocurrency doesn't create excessive amounts of energy beyond powering it on. It'll spike a little bit, but it's not like significant amounts. The excess energy is actually what's doing the mining. So that's why I'm so pissed about his statement here and don't emphatically disagree with it. Quote, with the Bitcoin price falling, the financial incentive to waste energy for mining Bitcoin should be lower. In theory, that's good for the climate. Okay, I'm not even going to quote the rest of his, but here's my problem with this statement. What he's saying is that as Bitcoin tanks right now, there should be less financial incentive to mine. Here's the fault with this is how I know he doesn't know what he's talking about. If the price of Bitcoin is lower, the incentive to mine is greater for two reasons. One, the difficulty, because now for the difficulty at whatever level it's set at, you're going to get more of whatever cryptocurrency. That means there's more incentive to do it because you're going to get more of it. Two, because it's lower, it creates a demand because there are people who still believe Bitcoin's going to go to six figures and beyond. So they're going to instantly say, I need to get more of this. I'm getting on this more and more and more. Why do you think we're seeing mining farms set up in Texas and North Dakota and Montana? It's because they know we want to get in on this now. Now's the time to do it because it's low. And if you stack enough of it, which they have been doing, when it does go up, you're going to make millionaires. So he's got it backwards because he doesn't understand how this works. He doesn't understand. He's got it backwards. He's treating it like regular currency, and that's not the way it works. It's backwards. Backwards. Quote, miners with the highest costs are likely to sell off their Bitcoin holdings as profitability drops, creating even more sell pressure in the market. Emphatically wrong. I even covered that we were seeing miners were actually stockpiling Bitcoin for the same reason I just said. When the price is going down, the miners know the value of this thing. They know it's destined to go back up. They don't know when, so they're stockpiling some of it. They're not going to sell. Miners are not going to sell when it's in the red. The people who are selling that's in the red is because they're ones they already hold it and they want the money out of it. Some miners might sell just to get profits to recoup, but they're going to be the low bit players, no pun intended. The ones who are the big ones, the ones who are running multiple ASIC machines in warehouses, they're not selling that crap. Or if they are, they're selling it on the OTC. They're selling it peer-to-peer to somebody else, and they're adding a premium over top of it. No matter what, this is a profit-driven situation. They are not going to be dumping off simply because the price of Bitcoin's down. They're going to do the opposite. We know this. Quote, the damage caused by Bitcoin mining disproportionately affects poor and vulnerable communities as mining outfits and crypto developers take advantage of economic instability, weak regulations, and access to cheap energy. Locals wanting to use these resources for productive purposes can be priced out by Bitcoin miners. These communities also tend to face the sharp end of the climate crisis, which crypto mining fuels. Here's another misrepresentation. First of all, when he says it, quote, disproportionately affects poor and vulnerable communities, crypto mining is not what's causing that. What's causing that is price gouging. The electric company right now will gladly price gouge you all it cares to because you run your air conditioner. Only because you ran the air conditioner in hot climates. To the point that some places actually had to enact laws to say that you are required to not do that. Well, that shouldn't be the case if this was not private enterprise. It's private enterprise. The electric and the energy and gas, natural gas companies are happily ripping you off. That's what disproportionately affects poor and vulnerable communities, is the fact they're allowed to do that. Bitcoin mining has had situations in third world countries where the mining has had an impact on the impoverished communities, but that's third world countries. Problem is that they had gone to those governments and said, we're about to do this. Do you see an issue? And the governments didn't see an issue up front because they didn't scale. They didn't scale and anticipate that demand. If you fail to scale, that's also, quote, disproportionately affecting poor and vulnerable communities because you're not scaling with growth. Regardless of the source of growth, it doesn't matter if you have crypto mining or more houses or more buildings on the industrial or more businesses on the commercial. None of that matters. The point is your government and your private enterprise has to scale with demand. This is 101 econ. And what frustrates me is he knows that. He knows this. So him making that statement is designed to trigger people into thinking that's something that's not factually true. It's not true in a vacuum. Hey, this thing here is going to cause this impact. No, it's not, because everything causes that impact. It's not this one thing. State, if you want to be accurate, the damage caused by the way we do private enterprise and in a capitalist society disproportionately affects poor and vulnerable communities, and Bitcoin mining may exacerbate these impacts. That's a factual statement. He didn't say it that way because nobody would care if he did state it that way. Quote, the crash shows that Bitcoin is both useless as a mainstream means of exchange and as a reliable store of value, bringing most users far more pain than profit. This is spoken as somebody who doesn't understand cryptocurrency. Number one, to say that it's basically useless as a means of exchange, if that's true, then why are we having governments buy into the damn thing? As a reliable store of value, if that's true, then why is so much backed by Bitcoin, even that which is not necessarily in the blockchains? Saying that it brings users far more pain than profit is absolutely a joke, because it depends on when you bought in. Even if you bought in late, let's say you bought in and it was only $30,000, you're up. You're slightly down when it hit 29, but generally speaking, you're up because you can sell and still make a profit if you do a limit order. And consider, I'm saying $30,000. You can still make a profit if you have 30,000 off of Bitcoin, because you can limit order and sell for profit, and that's going to close because there's demand. If what he said was true and it was uses more pain than profit, how can there be such demand for it? Econ 101, he knows this. He knows it, but he's making statements designed to trigger people. And frankly, this has nothing to do with any education he ever got. He's just making an opinion. He's entitled to it. Just position it correctly. The correct way to say what he's trying to say, I assume, is that, quote, in my mind, the crash shows that Bitcoin may not have as much application and usage for the mainstream as a means of exchange and reliable store of value, which could cause users more pain than profit. Now you're positioning in a potential. Now we can have a conversation about, well, what do you mean? Let's talk it out. Don't state it in absolute, because when you do that, you're going to get proven wrong, because you know you're wrong because demand is there. If demand was not there, I would agree with you, but we know demand's going to be there. Are these people just crazy? Are these people just stupid? No. The people that really have the demand for Bitcoin are the ones that know it's going to go up. They're not getting more pain than profit. These are smart people out there. If it really was about more pain than profit, you wouldn't have governments getting into it. Quote, for the global climate and a stable economy, cracking down now on crypto will be a boon for everyone. An absolute joke of a statement. To say global climate, so now he's leapt to climate change, right? Stable economy, as if the economy was stable before cryptocurrency was a thing. Cracking down now on crypto will be a boon for everyone. So now you're making lofty conclusion statements. And here's the thing. The way he wrote this, it's like he was writing some kind of an essay, like he was writing a closeout paper for his college, right? You have to make this summary statement, but you're not supposed to write it like this. You're not supposed to write it making affirmations that you can't back up. Global climate is not directly impacted by cryptocurrency. Is there an impact from cryptocurrency on some climate? Yes. However, they've already measured it, and they found that even if you took every last bit of mining that there is worldwide, it's still a fraction of impact on climate change. If we accept that as true, and you can search it yourself for the numbers, go to unbiased sources. If we accept that as true, that debunks his first four letters, first four words. Stable economy. The economy was destabilized and continues to be, irrespective of cryptocurrency. Remember, when we got done from World War I, we had a destabilized economy. When we got done in World War II, we had a destabilized economy. When we got out of Civil War, we had a destabilized economy. Vietnam War, destabilized economy. Pearl Harbor, destabilized economy. Persian Gulf, destabilized economy. War in Iraq, destabilized. Like, I can go on and on. Then we have different administration changes and they destabilize the economy with poor policies. An unstable economy, destabilized economy, has been a constant thing, in, at least in the United States, for as long as I've been alive and further. It was not caused by crypto. It's not going to be stabilized by the lack of cryptocurrency. It's stupid to think so. And what causes all this is we've turned economy into capitalism dependent. What do I mean? Right now, today, compared to the past, right now, we have to have people work. Why? Because we have to collect taxes. Why? Because we've written laws that the taxes are to be used to defray debt. Why? Because we changed the debt structure to basically allow them to print money at will. Well, wait a minute. Yes, the debt is nothing more than us on a piece of paper saying that this is how much we have extended. There's nothing really enforcing it other than we sell the debt overseas. We don't want to owe other countries that much money, so we collect taxes from the American people. That's fine. But the problem is that what happens when you have like COVID and people can't work, or people get fired because they don't stick something in their arm, or people get laid off because the company shuts down. Or there's all sorts of disruptions. These destabilize the economy. What happens when this billionaire like a Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Bernie Madoff, what happens when those happen? A destabilized economy. What happens when the housing bubble? A destabilized economy. These had jack all to do with cryptocurrency. That's why his statement is crap. And then to say cracking down now on crypto will be a boon for everyone. Let's say you do crack down. Let's say you turn it into the fucking stock market. Sorry, I had to swear on that one. Let's say you do that, right? Let's say you do that. Let's say you just go all in and you put all sorts of regs where nobody uses the darn thing. What's going to change? Nothing. Nothing will change. The stock market won't be improved. People's lives won't be improved. In fact, you would actually tank 3 countries, as I recall. What have you gained? Nothing. It's not going to get any better. I don't think it'll get any worse, but it ain't going to get any better because we're still early phase. Crypto is not, there's a myth that crypto is integrated into everything. It's not. I said it before. Until you can walk down to that drugstore that's got bars on the doors and bars on the windows and tell the guy I want to pay a Bitcoin and not have him tell you, I don't know anything about that, I heard about a deep deep. Until you can just openly transact this stuff, it's not mainstream. As long as it's not mainstream, it's not going to have broad impacts. The UST tether is an aberration. There are a lot of these aberrations. Regardless, it's still an aberration. It's not the same thing. Cracking down does nothing. Does not mean we should not have regulations. Smart regulations, not stupid regs like what he would want to put in place. We have to be smart about it. It's all about the people. We should protect people from people. It's not about the tools. Technology doesn't hurt people. People hurt people. The way they configure it, the way they deploy it, the way they use it, the way they require it. That's what hurts people. Let's regulate the people, not tools. Then if you think it correct that it's all about the people, you realize what he says is garbage. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing of what he says means anything. So I wanted to share this article because I was livid, not as even as a technologist, but just as a regular tax-paying citizen that I am, as somebody that's worked in government myself, as somebody that's been an auditor, as somebody that's worked financial, as somebody that's been in crypto. Like I look at and there's nothing of what he says that makes any damn sense other than he's trying to trigger people. Success. He's been able to trigger people, and I understand. I wanted to talk about it because I don't agree with people like this, and hopefully nobody listening to me believes in people like this. They're the ones that are going to cause harm to cryptocurrency. Scammers even. Because at least the scammers are outright with it. They'll just take your money. People like this will cost you money. I'd rather have somebody openly take from my wallet than sneak it from behind my back. So, last point real quick, and then I'm going to wrap up here because for some reason I'm hot. I am working extremely hard on the brand. It is challenging, but it's fun. And then I had a crazy idea, and I'm going to be working on this and see how I can make it happen. And it's going to be part of the CTR brand. I just got to figure out how to make that work. If I can turn it into a thing, it's going to be the most awesome thing nobody would see out of complete left field. And then I got to figure out how to market this business. And then with the tribe membership, I think I'm doing it correctly the way I want to do it, and everything's going the way I want to go, and I have no complaints about that one. We are working on our hosts and everything else, but I'm happy. I'm satisfied with what I've got built and created. Considering I'm a one-man show, I'm proud of what I got. And we finally got YouTube happy. We finally got Riverside happy. We finally got Zencaster happy. Everybody's happy. Finally, I did not spend thousands of dollars, although I will still eventually. I'm satisfied. Where I'm not satisfied, though, I do the coverage that I do, and this lock pay business just absolutely curveballed me because I didn't expect to find yet another project that had this cult in a form. It's about to form a cult. Just absolute blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid. I'm assuming. I don't know, but I struggle. I struggle seeing so many projects that they have such diehards. The dev is able to just convince people. No fundamentals, no solid anything. They're able to convince people that this is the future and this is the way it goes, and there's nothing wrong, and just trust me. Like Russ and Satama and Cliff and Shinja, and just I don't know what it is other than desperation and greed. And I would outreach to everybody listening to this. I know it's hard. I know it's hard because there's a temptation, right? If you see candles or you see green or you see price movement, dollar amounts, and there's a temptation. All I can say is I believe you're going to be emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically healthier, not falling to temptation and preventing yourself from falling into the trap that is some of these projects. Because if there's red flags all over the thing and people are bringing it to your attention, you have to be sensible and just at least look at it with an open lens and say, yes, these are red flags. I celebrate anybody that's a gambler as long as they say, I'm gambling here. I understand it's risky. I understand it's sketchy. I understand it's dirty. I'm going to go ahead and gamble on it. And people have done that, right? People did that with Satama just before the failed Vegas event. They said, you know what? I don't think it's going to last, but I'll toss some money and take the money and run. No problem. That happened on Floki. It happened on Floki V1. It happened on Floki V2. I support it. Happened on Safe Moon. I support it. I support when they admit they're gamblers. Where I have an issue is where people don't recognize that they're gambling. Excuse me, you're gambling if there's a red candle, if there's a red risk, red flag. If there's a red flag, you're gambling. Don't gamble, right? Or if you're going to gamble, admit that that's what you're doing. I would rather see people not gamble because it's getting less predictable. Crypto's getting less predictable. It's harder to find when something's harder to find when something's an open scam. It's hard to find out when something is absolute garbage. It's harder to know when something's going to happen. That's why I don't like people that gamble, but I recognize as long as they admit it, I respect it. I respect it. So hopefully that helps for people. Anyway, let me wrap up because I'm hot and I can't tell you why it's hot. I don't know. Up so I can find out why. Cool water and relax, not the cologne. Hopefully that's been helpful, informational, at least a little bit. I will be back on tomorrow. I have a separate update on tomorrow. There was some stuff that happened, and I will be on that one and talk about that one. I have to do some more digging and some more. Back tomorrow, talking about some various stuff. In the meantime, any other information that anybody has that they would like to share or ask about, cryptotalkradio.net is the best way to do it. We have a form that you can fill out, let us know, or something that you want us to cover. I just did one that somebody requested. So somebody asked me to cover that one, and I just did it. I'm happy to do that if you want me to take a look at it. Any project, I'm happy to do that as well. Just let me know through the form or through the comments, and I'm happy to do that as long as you come in with an open mind. Don't come in deciding, I already know I'm going to do it. I just want to hear what he has to say. Don't do that. Just say, whatever. I have no opinion yet. I'd like to get your thoughts on it and then go from there. Well, thank you folks for listening in. I will see you guys tomorrow.